I have millions of people watching. What if my future wife is watching this video? Put that in there, Jason. What's going on, guys, and welcome back to another video. As you guys can see, things are switched up a bit, and we have a very special guest host on today's video. I want to introduce everybody to my fiance and baby mama's Brittany.
Hi, guys.
So what we're going to be covering in today's video is how you can paint a pair of these Yeezy V2s, and we're going to be doing one of them with an airbrush and one of them with a paintbrush, and just talking to you guys about the differences, the techniques that you would need to apply, and the end result. I know you guys can't tell right now, but one of these was done entirely with an airbrush and one with a paintbrush. And we're just going to walk you over some of the similarities and the differences, and I think that you guys will be able to take away a lot from today's video. So Brittany has actually been helping out me and the business ever since we started many years ago, and she has gotten extremely good at painting things by hand, probably even better than me at painting stuff by hand. I tend to do almost everything with an airbrush nowadays. It's definitely a little bit faster, and if you're doing larger quantities of stuff, which we tend to do around here, it's definitely the way to go. But let's just say a pair of these Yeezys is maybe the first shoe you're ever painting. Is it still possible with a paintbrush? And that's what we're going to be covering in today's video. A lot of those things that you're going to want to need to know, and somebody is going to be teaching you who isn't me. So I think that you guys will be able to pick up some tips and cues from somebody else rather than the stuff that you guys always hear me say. So let's go ahead and dive into today's video. So we're going to be starting off with two pairs of the all-white Yeezy V2s, and the end goal that the client wanted was just two really simple colorways. One of them we're going to be doing with a mint colorway, almost kind of like that picture that we saw, I believe Kim or Kanye posted it almost a year ago, of just all these sample of the Yeezys, a lot of pastel colors, and that's where we got the inspiration for the mint one. On the other pair, we're just going to be creating a really simple gray and kind of like navy blue colorway. We're going to be utilizing the stripe like some of the early colorways of the V2s, but our end goal for these is just to create two really simple colorways. So now that we're ready to get into the painting of these, thankfully they don't require any prep work. You don't need to do any acetoning. We don't need to remove any factory finish. We can go ahead and just get into painting directly on top of this prime knit. But before we get into any of our painting, we're just going to make sure that we tape off the soles of both of these just to make sure that we don't get any paint on there when we're doing these. And then one little extra tip that I always recommend if you're painting any type of mesh, fabric, or prime knit and you're starting with a white surface, I still recommend laying down at least one coat of white paint just to make sure that your color is really going to pop, it's really going to be vibrant, and you're going to achieve the exact color that you're going for. Because a lot of surfaces, if you paint directly on top of them, even though if they start out as white, the color is going to be a little bit dulled, it's not going to be as vibrant, and you're going to be frustrated, and ultimately you're going to add too many coats, which is going to add to the stiffness. You're then going to no longer have that real softness that you're trying to keep when you're working with soft materials such as mesh, prime knit, or nubuck, anything like that. So this extra coat of white, it may seem a little bit redundant, but it's definitely going to go a long way. So after you're then done with that coat of white paint, one of the most important steps when working with a soft material like this is making sure that you go back with a heat gun. The reason I recommend that over a blow dryer is because you can get it a little bit hotter, and heat is going to be your friend when keeping your material extremely soft. And that is the goal when you're working like something like this, because things can go wrong pretty quickly and your material can get really soft if you don't apply this heating effect to really keep that paint nice and soft. Now real quickly, I just want to go over exactly how we made this mint mixture that we're going to be using on one of the shoes. I started off with a ratio of about 70% white, 20% mint, and then 5% light gray, along with 5% of gift box blue. So when creating your paint mixture for the Yeezys, you're going to need to make sure that you use the right medium. What we're going to be using is GAC 900 or Angelus 2 Soft. They are the exact same thing, and they will make sure that your material stays nice and soft. You're going to want to use them in a 1-to-1 ratio. So that means if you use 1 ounce of paint, you're going to use 1 ounce of your GAC 900. If you are painting a pair of these Yeezy V2s and you're trying to deck out the entire thing in one color, I recommend that you're going to need to use about 2 ounces of paint, and then that means you're going to need 2 ounces of your fabric medium. these materials tend to just kind of guzzle up a little bit more paint than if you were painting on leather. So you're going to need to want to make sure that you create enough of your mixture when doing something like this. Now, a quick little extra tip, if you're going to be doing the airbrushing style of these, I recommend that you still add just a little bit more tooth in, even if you've already done your 2 ounces of fabric medium and 2 ounces of paint. Still go ahead and add maybe a ½ ounce or so of the tooth in, just so you have the really nice thin mixture running through your airbrush for these. So now I'm going to pass things off to Brittany, and we're just going to go ahead and start walking you guys through the steps of hand painting a pair of these Yeezys.
So I want to talk about these Angelus brushes. I really liked using the number 10 flat because it helps get the most coverage and really helps in filling in the fabric. So to start off, I created a solid line around the midsole of the shoe. I like doing that because I'm just really neat in that way. I'm really into like details when I paint the shoe. After I created a solid line around the midsole, then I started around the sock liner. I just wanted to make sure that the sock liner was nice and clean, and I actually like to just do whatever is more difficult first. Any detailed work I like to get done first, so then I could just start attacking the whole shoe at once. Once I finished the sock liner, then I started creating sections in the shoe. I do that so I know I have a better idea of how many coats I've done on this. So when I create one section, I know, okay, I did 1 coat there and another coat on the other side. It's just a preference for me, so I know, keep track of what I'm doing, because you can get tunnel vision painting a shoe for so long. And doing so with creating these sections, one thing to pay attention to is how much paint you're using. Painting this type of shoe is not like painting a leather shoe. You can't just use the stroke of a brush. You really have to massage the paint in there to get full coverage. It's a longer process, but you know, it's all about quality work. Once you're finished with your first coat, you're gonna notice that there's gonna be a lot of white patchy spots all over the shoe. That's okay, because once you go over it again with the second coat, a lot of that's gonna be covered. And obviously with the third coat, it's gonna be completely gone. One thing I want to mention about painting a fabric shoe, once the paintbrush makes contact with this fabric, you have to be careful where you put the paintbrush, because the paint will bleed. Notice when I'm painting near the midsole, I'm not putting the paintbrush close to it because I don't want that paint to make any contact with this midsole. So I'm starting a little further away from the midsole and letting the paint bleed from there. So these are some of the tips and tricks that just kind of go in my head when I'm thinking about painting a fabric shoe.
So before I can get directly into airbrushing our entire shoe, I still like to go around with a tiny 1/2-inch angular paintbrush and just get in nice and tight directly near our midsole line and our sock liner. I know those are the same areas that coincidentally Brittany started with when painting the whole shoe with the paintbrush. I still like to do these right before painting with an airbrush, because you're going to get a little bit more solid paint coverage with the paintbrush. So going in with these tiny fine-tuned areas where it's harder to get with the airbrush, you're going to ensure that you have that nice solid coverage there. So now that I'm ready to move into my airbrushing of this shoe, I'm just going to make sure to try to do some really nice, simple, broad strokes, and you'll just kind of see, it's really interesting to see the side-by-side view of how much quicker it is to do a first coat with an airbrush versus a paintbrush, even though you are looking at totally different coverages within that first coat. And now we're going to show you guys a side-by-side of what these look like with one full coat of paint on both of these, one done completely by a paintbrush and one done entirely by an airbrush. So one of the most important things that you need to do in between every single coat of paint, whether you're painting by hand or with an airbrush, is make sure that you're applying heat via a heat gun. You're going to want to go around the entire shoe for at least a minute or so and make sure that you're holding the heat gun a decent distance away from the shoe. They recommend at least 9 to 12 inches or so, because you ultimately can burn a hole in the fabric. You definitely don't want to do that, so hold that heat gun far enough but still apply enough heat to make sure that we're going to keep that material nice and soft.
So when you're starting with your second coat of paint, make sure you have a plan of how you're going to paint them. I like to start at the front of the toe box and work my way back. That way I know what I've already painted, because it's hard to tell with the second coat, believe it or not. So try to follow the same path you did with the first coat with the second coat. If you see any areas where there's white peeking through, make sure you pay special attention to that and fill it in.
And so when we're moving into our second coat of airbrushing, there really isn't any major kind of cues that you need to be doing. You're really just trying to make sure that you're getting more solid coverage, because it is going to take more coats of airbrushing than if you're doing it by hand. So the second coat, you'll just start to see that you're just starting to fill in the entire thing just a little bit more. After that second coat of airbrushing though is where I then am going to pull out the paintbrush again. I'm going to try to really spread the fabric and really fill things in by hand. You're not going to be able to do this. It doesn't matter if you did 10 coats of airbrushing. Unless you really spread that fabric by hand and fill it in with the paintbrush, you're going to have white peeking through when your client ultimately puts his foot in here and spreads the entire fabric. That's what happens with these. I know when you're just doing them by hand, you're painting them, the fabric seems, nice and solid, but again, these have some stretch and pull to them, and that's what happens when the client wears them. So you need to make sure they are getting all of the nooks and crannies of these entirely painted.
So with the third coat, you're just really paying attention to any spots you might have missed before and just finalizing the shoe. You should really get these done with 3 coats.
So now that you guys were able to see, Brittany was able to finish hers off in 3 coats total by hand. You'll notice that on this third coat of airbrushing, we still don't have that full, really looking solid coverage. So ultimately, we are going to do 5 coats total via airbrushing. So now on both the airbrush and the hand painted version of these, we're going to go ahead and do the stripe by hand. I just like to pull up some images of the early V2s online just so I can really see that staggering stripe effect that you're going to be trying to achieve. You're going to go ahead, paint this by hand. You're going to still want to use those same paint mixtures to keep that stripe material nice and soft, so you're going to want to mix in your fabric medium. Then from there, I like to do the dotting effect near the end of the stripe, which is near the toe box of the shoe, and it just has this really cool stippling effect near the end of the stripe. And one of our last little details that we're going to be doing is adding the Supply 350 onto the stripe. Now the way that I go about doing this is just create the Supply 350 text within our stencil program. I use Silhouette Studio. I have a Silhouette Cameo 2 to create our stencils, and the font that I use is called BCR OSD Mono. And I think it's the closest thing to achieving that kind of VCR, almost computerized effect that you'll see on the Supply 350 text. Then from there, I like to use Oracal 651 vinyl anytime I'm applying vinyl onto a fabric surface. And we did an entire video dedicated to just this vinyl as a review of using it on fabric materials, because it is so hard to find a vinyl that's going to hold up really well against most fabrics. And as far as finishers go for both of these, I like to use the Krylon Matte Finish Spray. I don't recommend doing any liquid finishes with the paintbrush on these, so I go ahead and just use the Krylon Matte Spray for them. For our mint pair specifically, we wanted to create laces that are going to match the exact shade of mint that we use, so we're going to need to go ahead and dye our Yeezy laces for this. In order to do so, you're just going to take about an ounce of paint, and then we're going to do the same thing when painting a fabric material. So we're going to mix in about another ounce of fabric medium, the GAC 900 or the Angelus 2 Soft. I'm then going to use also a little bit of duller, of course, and then what you're going to do is just go ahead and throw your laces into the mixture, really mix it up, and then from there you just need to really kind of strain out all the excess paint that is within the laces. So you'll see my technique from this is hanging the laces directly from the middle and then just trying to strain out as much paint as I can. Otherwise, the laces are going to be a little bit stiff, but if you really try to strain out all the excess paint and apply some heat to the laces, you're going to be able to keep them nice and soft also. Now we're going to go ahead and lace both of these up with those mint laces that we just created, and we have a pair of Lace Lab 54 inches with a nice 3M touch that we're going to throw on the gray pair. And now we're just going to go ahead and give you a quick look at how both of these turned out. Alright, so what we're doing here is we're going to blindfold Jason, and we're just going to go ahead and let him feel both of these. And what we're trying to find out here is if you can feel any differences between the airbrush painted pair and the hand painted pair. So I'm going to just go ahead, shuffle these around. Jason can't see, it's pretty dark. Go ahead, turn him into a bird box meme. And alright, ready, set,
No, to be completely honest, I cannot tell the difference. If I were to guess...
Go ahead and guess.
If I were to guess...
Hold it up. Pick up which one you think is painted with an airbrush.
I would say this is the airbrush one.
Okay.
And this is the painted one.
Okay, put them down. I'm gonna shuffle them again, and I want you to try and do that one more time. Alright, feel them again and pick up which one you think is softer, if at all.
Alright, if I was going for the airbrush one, I'd say it's this one, and if it's painted, it's this one.
So go ahead and take a look. So you actually got it right both times.
Oh, did
both times
really?
You picked up this one, but overall you say that difference is very minimal, huh?
Yeah, honestly.
Because I'd agree.
Yeah, it's very minimal. I honestly couldn't tell which one is which. I was just guessing at that point. I really was just guessing. But yeah, you really can't tell which one's painted and which one is airbrushed.
So I think that's a good test for you guys just to be able to see if you do all these techniques right, you make sure that you're applying that heat in between every single coat, you're still going to be able to achieve a really nice soft feeling effect with the fabric when painting it by hand versus airbrushing. So we hope you guys enjoyed all that. I know this was a long video, but I really hope you guys were able to pick up on some of the tips and tricks and little cues that both of us talked about in today's video. So we want to give a major thanks to Brittany for helping us out film this video. Go ahead and give this video a like just for her. It's really hard being on camera. You guys may not think so, but for some reason getting behind this camera, all of a sudden you don't know how to talk. For some reason you forget what you're going to want to say. It's really hard. It's nerve-wracking. Even when you're painting and Jason's getting all up in your face, getting close to you while you're trying to paint. It's a little kind of different than just being in your comfortable space of painting by yourself and kind of zoning out. So it's unique. Thank you for helping us out.
You're welcome.
So if you guys aren't already, make sure you're subscribed, hit that bell, turn those notifications on, make sure you don't miss a thing from us. Go ahead and give this video a like. We'd really appreciate it. And we will see you guys in that next video.
Yay!